Well, we've reached episode 20, and as always, it's me, Chucky, here, and we've got G-Money, Jigsaw.
Hey, what's up, guys?
Yeah, yet again, another 5 movies to discuss, and so this week we've got The Brood from 1979, a David Cronenberg film, and then we switch to Meridian from 1990, which is a full moon movie, I believe. Then we've got a wonderful movie called Dawn of the Dead from 2006. You'll really want to stick around for that discussion. Then we've also got Child's Play 3 from 1991. As we all know, Chucky the Killer Doll is back, and this time he's in the army. And then we finish off the show with Creepshow 2 from 1987, which is the horror anthology sequel to the original.
So, as Chucky said, this is directed by David Cronenberg, and if you've seen any of his movies, you know they can sometimes be a bit strange. This one follows a guy who has a ex-wife in a mental institution. And things happen with the ex-wife's family. The guy's child gets kidnapped by what seems to be mutant kids, and then other things happen toward the end. And there's also a pretty cool psychologist, played by Oliver Reed, who is probably one of the best parts of the movie in my opinion. It's a strange movie, very, almost like psychological, and then when it gets toward the end, there's some body horror elements thrown in. You know, it's not too far removed from like what you might see from Videodrome or something. It's interesting. And I think it's somewhat well made. It's just my main issue is I've seen this movie twice. I just don't care that much for the story. I think it keeps you somewhat engaged, but the direction it went wasn't something I personally cared much for.
Yeah, I had a bit of a tug of war between enjoyment and boredom with this one. I think there's some good scenes in the movie. Then there's a lot of parts where you just kind of sitting around and you're thinking, I'm just kind of waiting for the next thing to happen. But probably the worst thing about the movie is that school teacher's horrible hairdo.
I thought it was deeply attractive myself.
Is that sarcasm or serious?
It's probably sarcastic.
Okay, I hope so. Because that needs to go. Yeah, I've seen the movie a couple of times now. I mean, there's no Cronenberg movies that I love, but I usually just enjoy them enough for me to say they're decent movies. This one's okay. I mean, I like elements to the story. I think it's interesting once it really goes along further and obviously towards the end. But yeah, like I said, I just there's moments where you're like, there's not a whole lot happening. I'm not too interested in what they're trying to build up to here. And then suddenly you get a scene, like this mutant kid or whatever you want to call it is out there just bashing people, and you're like, oh, okay, things just really picked up, things got really interesting, and then they focus more on the dad again, and I didn't really find all that much interest in his character, aside from the fact that, he eventually is just trying to stop this stuff from happening. But yeah, that's, I guess that's more or less where I'm at with this one.
Yeah, it's a very, at times the movie seems somewhat atypical, which is probably expected from Cronenberg. I've seen maybe only, let's say, 5-6 of his movies. I've not seen that many. Admittedly, the first time I saw this, I didn't much care for it. But, I appreciated it more this time around. I sort of like the mystery of, what's going on, what happened to the father-in-law, I found that stuff interesting. And I did like the scene with the autopsy, when they're going over, hey, this is a really strange thing that we found. So that's sort of fun. That means, the authorities actually know that, hey, something creepy is going on, and you don't necessarily see that all the time. So, I was okay with that. It just, the story, especially toward the end, when it gets more into the explanation of what's going on, it's a bit out there for me, and it's just something that like I said, it's not really my type of thing. And one other small thing, early on in the movie, the father has a lawyer, and the lawyer tells him to go see this like guy who used to be in the same asylum his ex-wife is now in, to I guess have a joint lawsuit. And it just sort of cracked me up because this guy's like a mental patient guy's somewhat unhinged. So the idea that, hey, you should have a credible lawsuit linked with this, like lawsuit just to get, throw blame at this institution, you should join up. That just seemed like a bad lawyer decision to me. But and that whole subplot with the that guy and then the other guy who used to be in the same institution, I don't know how much it really added to the movie, in my opinion, and that's probably one of the parts I didn't care as much for. I don't know, it's just an interesting movie, which doesn't necessarily make it a good movie. I don't know, it's probably not one of my favorites, but it's okay. It's an okay movie.
I mean, there's a couple of decent actors in here to like. Like you said, there's Oliver Reed, but I also like Samantha Eggar, if that's how you pronounce her surname. I've seen her in a couple of things, and
that's a familiar name, and I have no idea where I've seen her.
Well, we saw her last week when we did Curtains. She was in that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. That's probably the main other thing that I've seen her in. She's done a lot of TV work as well, but I think she's almost 90 years old now, so she's getting up there in age. I don't think she's been in anything in the last 5 to 10 years, but she was in a lot of stuff obviously earlier in her career.
Yeah, it's fun because when I saw that name come up on the screen, I'm pretty sure I've seen that name recently, but I haven't had time to actually see what else she's been in. So the fact that she was just in the movie a couple of weeks ago just sort of cracks me up. And also that reminds me, there was another scene I just wanted to give kudos to, which is the scene following the father-in-law who's drinking and moaning over the loss of his ex-wife. And, just sort of stumbling up the stairs, going into his ex-wife's room, just crying, drinking. And then all of a sudden, this mutant kid jumps out, which is, I don't know, I thought that was a nice setup for that scene. That one individual who was beat to death with some hummus, with some good stuff, I have a feeling those students may be traumatized.
Yeah. Spoiler alert, I think they did it just because of her hairdo.
I'm not sure how much thought those things had, but I do appreciate your malice toward that hairdo. The funny thing is, I've seen 15 movies since I've seen this one, but I actually don't remember what the hairdo looked like, so if you give me 1 second, I can try to find this out. Yeah, this movie, like I said, I've seen it twice. I liked it more this time around, but the story is it's too out there for me. I think it's engaging enough, and I actually thought there weren't that many scenes that were tedious. I thought it was okay. It's not my favorite thing, but I could see myself watching it again in the future. Some nice classic Canadian horror. Nothing wrong there. Oh, and I just see the hairdo now, and I can see why you hate it. Okay, yes. I just found just a picture that says it's the worst haircut ever, so that's so funny. Anyhow, yeah, so I'm going to give this one slightly below average, just a 6.5. I enjoyed elements about it. There's just a short scene where the 2 kids are walking with the kidnapped child, just walking down a deserted road. And it just has, I don't know, atmosphere. Even though the logic in the movie, and the ending's a bit iffy, but it's interesting movie. So 6.5, it's okay. Give it a shot.
Yeah, I give it a 6 out of 10, which is my okay rating. Like I said, there's scenes that really stand out, but then there's a whole lot of scenes in between that I just don't care for, and I'm just sitting around waiting for the next attack or whatever it is to happen, because I just didn't really care too much about some of the other supporting characters. And I mean, well, the characters at this facility, or whatever you want to call it, with Oliver Reed's character and like I said, Samantha Eggar's character. They're interesting, but everyone else in the movie is not all that interesting to me.
Yeah, I would say without Oliver Reed, I would probably not have nearly liked this movie as much.
But I think the one thing that we can both agree on is that the best thing that David Cronenberg's ever done is appear in Jason X.
I'm probably going to disagree with that, but that's okay.
Okay, well...
David Cronenberg's best movie is probably They Came From Within, or Shivers, from 1975. Just a trivia piece for you guys.
Yeah, well... Agree to disagree.
Yeah.
Anyone listening, just add a comment and let us know who you agree with. I'm sure anyone who's watching this is like a fan of The Brood or something, and they're just going to shit on my comment, but whatever. So next up we've got Meridian from 1990. So there's these two women, Catherine and her best friend Gina, who travel to Catherine's family castle in Italy after her father's death, and once they're there, the two of them visit a local carnival where Gina invites the head magician Lawrence and his crew to the castle for dinner, and at the dinner Lawrence drugs both the women and rapes Gina in front of his crew, and then he carries Catherine off to another room where he strips her naked, but eventually pulls away so his twin brother Oliver can instead get laid. So as the film progresses, Catherine finds that the brothers are under this curse which turns them into these beasts or werewolves or whatever the fuck they're meant to be. And she kind of helps Oliver get what he wants done out of that. So this is a movie that my wife tends to enjoy. She's seen it a few times, and that's kind of why I first saw it. I didn't watch it just recently. I did see it a year or two ago, but yeah, it's definitely not a movie that I really care that much for. I mean, it's got its moments, and there's a certain vibe to it that you can get from some full moon movies, like just based on the locations and things like that. But yeah, there's a lot of different things about the movie that just didn't do it for me.
Yeah, so I was enjoying this movie up to the point where the whole rape thing happened. I didn't really see that coming. I didn't know what was going to happen, so they went that way. So that's like interesting. But like you said, I think the vibe's pretty solid. But then everything after that rape scene, like I know you raped me, but I guess I love you, you know? Yeah, I didn't care for that whatsoever. And the whole, like, hate-love thing between the brothers. You know, I keep you alive because I hate you. I'm just... I just don't care. It's a bit over-the-top melodramatic for me. I almost felt like a soap opera at times, to be honest. And not a particularly gold one. I mean, but it's okay. It's an interesting movie. And if you're into, like, you know, full moon movies, the Sap Species series, you know, you'll probably get some enjoyment out of it. There's some solid nudity, I guess, if you don't mind nudity in the form of rape. So there's also a pretty cute chick named Charlie Spradling in it, who played Gina, who was the more attractive of the two women. So
she had big titties.
Yeah, it's funny, because I you know, to be honest, I didn't even notice until she was nude, and it's like, oh, hey, that's interesting. I mean, it's an interesting movie. I just don't really care for where the story goes past the whole rape scene. But I will say that the whole, like, show, the, you know, magician and other, you know, tricks they do, that's sort of interesting. And the whole, like, really strange dinner party. If I had a castle, I would probably not invite those people over to my dinner. That's just me. It's not something I can see myself watching again anytime soon. I don't even particularly like it, but it was okay for a single watch. And I just remembered one thing that sort of bothered me. Like, Gina's character sort of just disappears. She's like, she gets back to, you know, dealing with the painting and trying to uncover the painting. And then she sees what the painting is, and then she runs back, and then she doesn't do anything. I'm just somewhat disappointed by that. Like, she just sort of disappears, and I wish she did more. If the movie focused more around her, I might be okay.
I'd maybe disagree when you said that she was the most attractive out of the two. Well, not necessarily disagree, just I'm a bit more neutral on that.
Yeah, I thought you might be, so I was trying to throw a point of contention for us so we can fight and stuff.
Yeah, this is the thing worth fighting about. I mean, I've seen Sherilyn Fenn in other movies, and the lead actress in this one, I've seen her in other movies, and she's definitely very attractive. And I've found her more attractive in other movies than in this one, even though I still think she's attractive in this one.
I mean, here she's just some rich girl. I mean, who needs that? I mean, at least Gina's character is fun and outgoing and stuff.
Okay. Well, I mean, yeah, like I said, I've seen Sherilyn Fenn in other movies. Probably the most notable one that I watch her in is a movie called Fatal Instinct. I'm not sure if you've seen it, but it's like a spoof movie of thrillers, and I mean, in the title alone, I think the title's made up of the two movies Fatal Attraction and Basic Instinct, but it's a really hilarious movie. I'd recommend it. It's from the early 90s.
Yeah, it might shock you to know I've not seen either one of those movies.
Or Fatal Instinct.
Yeah, it's true.
Okay, well, you should watch all three. Anywho's, moving on to another very important question. And I'm sure this is something everyone would love to get your opinion on. You know, when we see this beast or whatever on the screen, werewolf, I don't know what you want to call them. But my question to you is, do you think that once they've transformed into this thing, that they still have a human penis? Or one of those ones like, you know, like a dog has, where it's like someone winding up a thing of lipstick?
Well, that is a nice virtual question. Though, to be honest, it has some relevance. Well, not so much in the movie, but, you know, when the brothers switch, you know, when the guy says, hey, she's all yours, he starts out human and then he becomes this beast thing. You know, I was somewhat worried, like, you know, hey, that might cause some damage. I mean, I guess she is physically okay the next morning, from everything we can tell, but I feel like there definitely should have been something, you know. I have a feeling a beast that size, and it's somewhat tall, I feel like there might be a bit much for a human woman, but, you know, that's just my opinion. I mean, it doesn't help that she was, you know, being raped, so, I mean, it's not a good situation at all, but it's okay because she falls in love with him.
Yeah. Well, I'm just going to say that I think he had a lipstick dick.
Yeah, see, I feel like I need more. I don't want more detail, but
you need more. You need more. Yeah.
Need is such a strong word, but I feel
these are the things that we really need answers to.
When they make a Meridian too, maybe that'll be one of the things that they talk about.
I guess the only other point that I had for this one... No, I did watch this again last night, but I must admit I didn't pay as much attention to it because I actually watched it less than 12 months ago. There's this thing about how this curse can be broken by her loving him. Is that right?
That was what I got from it.
Yeah. And I guess a part of that I really take issue with is that I don't buy that she could have loved him. Like, surely, you know, feel sympathy or empathy or, well, you know, feel sorry for him and want to help him, but at the same time, I mean, they don't even have similar interests. Like, do they both do table tennis? I mean, what?
There was I forget, I don't know the range that the movie took place in, if it's like just a week, but it was a pretty quick turnaround, and I don't personally see, maybe that Catherine, maybe she was like emotionally manipulated into loving him, but it works out anyway. I don't know if we really know much about her character to really gauge that type of thing, which is sort of why I liked Gina's character more. Catherine was sort of like, even after, you know, we see the movie, we don't really know much about him, and I don't personally think she's that engaging of a character, to be honest. Although I will mention one thing, I did like the old woman, who was played by Hilary Mason, it looks like, who played Martha, sort of like a housekeeper type woman. Though I think she was more important than that. And this sort of like a twist in the movie about her that came out of nowhere and didn't mean anything in my opinion. But I did like the actress. I thought she was probably one of the better actresses in the movie. So it's a shame she did not have a nude scene.
No comment. Yeah, I've definitely seen her in other movies before. She looks very familiar. I'll probably kick myself when I realize what other movies I've seen her in. But actually, it's Dolls. That's what I was thinking of. She's in Dolls.
Oh, she is. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. I knew the face, but I had no idea where it's at before. So, and that is the 1987 classic, which is actually a legitimately solid movie for anybody listening.
Yeah.
I will say that, and this might not mean much to you because I know that you don't watch much classic horror, or I guess what I would call classic horror, like 30s and 40s. The dinner scene reminded me a lot of a 1932 movie called Freaks. And this is a scene very similar, where there's a merchant on a table filling up, and just to clear, by merchant I mean Joe, for however you are to call those people. There's a dwarf on the table filling up wine glasses and just, being very jovial. And the scene just like that happens in the movie Freaks, which I happened to see just like a week and a half ago. So I just wanted to point it out. I have no idea if that type of thing was intentional because that movie also has to do with like carnival sideshow freak type people. So I just thought it was interesting and worth mentioning. So that's all I had.
Okay, well, you can ask Charles Band. I'm sure when you do ask him, you'll somehow have a lighter wallet afterwards. You probably don't get that joke, but anyways.
No. Charles Band did direct the movie, I do know that much.
Yeah, so Meridian, it's a movie that I didn't really feel engaged in the story. I mean, it's got quite a bit to the story. I just didn't really care for the story. No, I'm not a huge fan of fantasy type movies in general, and there's quite a strong fantasy element to this one, or at least fantasy vibe. Decent tits in the movie though. 5 out of 10. That's where I'm at.
Yeah, I'm not really too far removed. I like I said, I like the vibe for a lot of this. I did like the setting. It's like a pretty nice looking castle, but the story itself just didn't do it. I mean, the beast was okay looking, but then it got into like a whole, I love you and I'll save you, and it's not my thing. So I'm giving this one a 5.5, and I'm going to probably lower that down to a 5 out of 10. I liked some stuff about it, but not enough to really make a very positive impact on me.
Except the titties.
Yeah, see, you say that, and I might remember them for another week, but that's probably as far as I'll go.
Just another week is all you need, and then you can move on to the next pair.
Speaking of the next pair, there was a few tits in Dome of the Dead. It's a solid segue.
Less impressive titties, though.
Well, it's a less impressive movie. Dome of the Dead, and there are 2 movies by this name, at least. So we are talking about the 2006 movie, which is a very, very low budget movie.
There's a budget?
Well, I'm assuming they had to pay somebody something. I don't know who they paid and what they paid them, but at least $20 went into this. But it's a very simple plot. There's I think it's called Outcome University. It's a very cliche college.
What do they think, they're Batman or something?
Oh, H.P. Lovecraft even, but yeah. So this is a university. There's this one gothic chick and her friend who doesn't seem gothic at all. They get on the wrong side of this hilariously sad and burly chick who wants to get revenge on them for laughing at her in class. Which is such a ridiculous thing to do, what to get revenge for. So there's a professor who's talking about zombie blood. So she takes, she steals the zombie blood and pours it into the goth chick's mouth, and the goth chick becomes a zombie. And it's it's some good stuff. What did you think about this one, Chucky?
Jeez, where do I start? I've got so many notes on this one just because there's so many things wrong with it.
Sit and spin, bitches.
Yeah. It opens up with this guy doing some intro, going, "Oh, are you afraid? You should be." I'm like, well, I haven't seen anything yet. Why should I be afraid? Anyways, so that got off to a pretty stupid start. Like you said, there's some scenes with some nudity and some potential sex scenes, I guess. Not that we ever really see anything going too far beyond kissing naked and stuff, but yeah, there's that dude at the start who, you know, he leaves with blue balls or whatever, and he has the worst peripheral vision ever. Like, there's this zombie girl behind him, and based on the camera angles, it looks like he should have easily been able to see her standing there. And then, like, more of them come around, and this dude starts doing parkour out of nowhere, and I don't know what the fuck was going on. And then after that, you know, then it turns into this lesbian scene with probably mismatched music. A lot of the music in the movie is mismatched. They just play, you know, just a lot of different random songs that they could probably find that were like free for commercial use or something. You know, there's a lot of generic radio rock and then some heavy metal and then even some weird, I don't know, whatever else that music was, but I almost feel like at times the director made this just as an excuse to see some titties.
Yeah, it's interesting because the director is actually somewhat well known for his, throughout the late 80s and 90s, he had quite a few, somewhat one known is a strong word, but within like the horror community, he did some movies that, you know, people talk about, Vampire Cop, Cannibal Hookus, a few others that, you know, might stand out. I've not seen many of them, but I do know that based on what I've seen and read, this is probably not one of his finest works.
Well, you better hope not. There's multiple scenes in the movie where it feels like he's recorded parts of the conversation separately and not at the same time. Like, you can imagine that maybe, like just for instance, there's a scene where the two girls run into that blonde chick who, you know, is cracking all these kind of jokes at them, and it sounds like, okay, they filmed this one girl's lines, and then later in the day or another day, they filmed the other girl's lines, and they just kind of splice the two together. And that happens a lot in the movie.
Yeah, I got the same type of feeling with the whole college lecture. Like I said, it focuses on the professor, and then it shows the students, and it just goes back and forth. And it sort of cracked me up. I was going to ask, did you watch, there's sort of like an after-credit type scene.
I can't recall. Remind me what it is if I did.
Well, it's this guy hitting on this girl, and her father comes in, and eventually they get attacked by zombies.
No, I don't think so. I think once the credits were up, I was like, okay,
we're done. I don't blame you. So I actually did watch that scene, and it was some of the worst stuff I've ever seen. You know, like the guy really wants to get with this chick, and the chick's like, I don't know if she's like really naive, but you know, he's making all these sexual innuendos, and she has no idea what he's talking about, and it just it keeps going and going for like 5-6 minutes. So it's some solid stuff. I've actually seen this one once before, way back in the day, or maybe around 2010, 2011. I was on another radio podcast type thing for horror movie fans, and we had a show where we covered like 5 zombie movies, and this being one of them. And I think I was like 15 or 16 back then. And I wasn't much impressed with this back then either. I think it was probably the worst movie of the 5 that we watched. But I do remember, that, you know, it's a bad movie, but it's, in my opinion, some of it's so bad that you can't help but have an okay time with it. I'm not saying it's a movie that I would watch again anytime soon, but I certainly don't think it's as bad as other movies I've seen in recent times. You know, at least it's not like overly dry, and it's it's pretty short runtime, so it's not like it keeps you for too long.
Yeah.
That said, I do not want to be known as the guy who's defending Dome of the Dead.
Yeah, I mean, I've certainly seen worse movies. It's by no means the worst movie I've ever seen, but it's it's way down there. I mean, obviously the dialogue is pretty terrible in the movie, and even the audio is just. You could tell this is like a type of movie where someone's just kind of grabbed a camera and a bunch of people they know, and it's like, let's film this shit. It does have Tiffany Shepis in it, who is quite well known in, a lot of low budget horror. So I know they attached her name to the poster, even though she's got more of a smaller role in the movie. And she usually gets her tits out in almost everything I've seen her in, so at least there's that. So, there is a little bit of draw just from her name being attached to it, but everyone else in the movie, in terms of their acting, is pretty terrible.
Terrible, yet fun. I mean, who doesn't like the two chicks, the goth chick and her friend? I mean, they made a wonderful pair.
Another thing in the movie is, after this lead character gets the zombie blood poured in her mouth, like you said, ridiculous type of revenge plot here, especially considering, that blonde girl, she's really the bitch of the movie. But isn't it weird how all the other zombies in the movie, they don't talk and they all move slow, and then this one, the lead character, she can still talk quite normally and still moves around quite normally. Is that like an inconsistency? I don't think they put a lot of thought into it.
Maybe because she got the blood poured into her instead of bitten, it's different. I mean,
I'm not buying that.
Yeah, I'm not buying it either. I suspect that the I don't know if more than one person. Apparently the same guy who directed it also wrote the movie. I suspect they didn't think that much about the type, consistency between the zombies, and I suspect there's probably quite a bit he didn't think about when making this movie. On the upside,
there's an upside.
Actually, you say that, and I actually forget what I was going to say, so there may not be an upside. Well, I was going to say, I did like the really terrible flashback with the professor. It's like, oh, it's you, I remember. And then it goes back to like a 5-minute flashback scene of this love gone wrong between professor and student. I think I cried during that part.
Yeah. Because another thing we should mention is the effects in the movie, which, I mean, like you said, the budget might have been $20 for this movie. If so, they probably overachieved in a matter of speaking. But when you compare this to just pretty much most other movies that you watch, obviously it's pretty terrible, like the effects and all. For instance, there's this one scene. I don't think people care about spoilers.
Yeah, for this movie, I can't imagine that's a main concern.
Yeah, but I think it's somewhere around halfway through the movie that Professor gets attacked by those zombies and he gets his arm torn off. And there's a scene in which he's falling down. You can clearly see his hand through his coat. I mean, they just kind of saw that and went, fuck it, no one will care. We'll put it in.
Yeah, that was certainly some of the best special effects I've seen.
Yeah, and then towards the end, and actually I thought, even despite that and a few little bits and pieces, I thought they were doing okay in that area. And then they just blow it completely open at the end. During that news report, there's this just random guy shooting these zombies, but it doesn't look like it's actually, like they've just spliced some clip of some dude shooting on top of it. So it just looks in no way, shape or form, it just doesn't look like it. It looked like someone was starting to watch a movie over the fucking news report rather than, actually shooting a live video of someone shooting these zombies. And then obviously the effects of the actual gun itself, I can't remember exactly what it sounded or looked like, but I know it was terrible. Pew pew pew. Well, it wasn't like that, but it was just so unlike what it's meant to sound like. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and you can tell by the enthusiasm that both of us share that this is certainly a movie you should get out and see. And luckily for anybody interested, it should be on YouTube. So, by all means, if you would like to give Dome of the Dead a shot, and I might as well mention this too, because it came up when both of us were going for this. This, like I said at the beginning, is another movie by this name that came out in 2012. And I actually started watching that one, and I got about like 5-6 minutes in until I realized, oh hey, this is not the right movie. Because like I've said, I've seen this one before, and it didn't feel right. I mean, it's been like 10 years since I've seen it, so I thought, well, maybe it could be. And then I'm watching it, and like, this does not feel like the same movie. So I do a little research, and I found out, oh hey, this is not the right movie. This movie on IMDb has a 2.2, and the one from 2012 has a 2.3. So either way, no matter which movie you're watching, you're going to get some quality cinema. But I suspect, just based on what I saw from the 2012 movie, that movie might be slightly more professional. But I don't know if it can be quite as fun as this movie is.
Well, the most entertaining thing for me in this movie was just seeing as they're driving towards this, or driving into this drive-in theater, that they actually showed a screen saying they're playing Silent Hill and See No Evil. And obviously much better movies than this. I don't know, it was nice to see those movies on there, and yeah.
If I recall, both of those came out in 2006. So it's it makes sense, since this movie was made in 2006.
They literally drove past a drive-in theater that was actually playing those movies, which is my guess. But I kind of get the feeling they didn't really have a whole lot of permission to shoot in a lot of these locations.
I can't imagine. That brings me up another point I wanted to mention. The whole this is sort of a star part in this movie where the goth chick has some financial issues. So she is moved to what's called like a charity dome. The dome's like it seems to me just to be like a factory. Like her room, quote unquote, was just like this giant garbage heap with rats and stuff, which struck me as somewhat unprofessional on the part of the the college. But I'm guessing that if they have some of the students living in rat-infested domes, it's not really high priority.
Yeah, well, the dean was all levels of professional.
I did like that guy. He has some quality.
I like how he's talking on the phone to her, like, I don't know who this is, but I would send you to live there or whatever.
Yeah, see, that's why, a movie like this it's horrible, but there's enough in it to, not get, like I said, you're not going to want to watch this again, but you might want to say, tell a friend to check it out, tell them to have a good time, and you might have an okay time. Yeah, so the movie is horrible, but it's still somewhat fun. It's almost difficult. See, the budget itself doesn't really matter much to me. And I feel like Chucky said, the special effects were, for the budget they were decent aside from a few scenes. But the random sex scenes didn't really do, it didn't really matter much to the story. Like the two lesbian chicks, well, I guess one was probably bisexual, but I mean, that seemed like entirely pointless, just an excuse to show another zombie attack, and it's not like the zombie attacks were like amazing, but that just might be more a complaint with zombie movies in general. This movie's not great, and I would even necessarily say you should watch it one time, but you might have an okay-ish time if you go in with the expectations that, hey, this movie's, going to be somewhat shit. So I'm going to give this one a 5.5 out of 10. And I'm actually probably going to, and I've thought about this throughout me talking about it, I'm going to actually move it up to a 6 out of 10. so it's still below average, but it's something. In before 1 out of 10.
Here's the thing about this movie, and we've talked about this before, where your mood can also affect your rating of the movie, and I think I actually watched this while I was in the best possible mood to have ever watched it, and I also went into it knowing that I was, or expecting a 1 out of 10 movie. So when your expectations are that low, you can always potentially talk yourself into giving it a higher rating than you probably would have, any other time. And so I actually at times considered giving this a 2 out of 10. But I just know that I can't see myself enjoying this on any level ever again.
Well, you say that.
I have to give it a 1 out of 10. I just have to. If I don't know if I could live with myself.
I see, it's interesting. Now, is this... I can't remember all the movies we've spoken about. Do you know how many other movies you've given a 1 out of 10, or is this the first one?
So far on the website, there's definitely a whole lot of other movies I've seen that I never added to the website that I would have probably given a 1 out of 10. Now, I probably can't recall what those are because I just never cared to ever see them again. They all would have likely been very low budget stuff like this one. I mean, this is a type of movie where if someone, like I said earlier, if someone just grabbed a bunch of their friends and said, hey, let's make a movie, we've got no experience at all, even though this guy does have some experience and he's, like I said, it's got Tiffany Shepard in it and stuff, so it's not the worst actors in the world. Obviously, a lot of them aren't good, but if someone were to make a movie with a bunch of their friends and then it turned out like this, I would call that a very, a great achievement. It would be a good movie for that type of situation. But when you're comparing this to watching all the other types of movies that you watch, whether it's in cinema, on Blu-ray, or whatever, this is a turd.
I find it interesting. I've rated a few things, I'm not sure if I've given something a 1 out of 10, but I have given a few 0 out of 10s, which I guess get rounded up to a 1 out of 10.
How can you give this a 6 and then give The Greasy Strangler a 0 or Triloquist a 0?
I was just about to talk about that. See, with both of those movies that you mentioned, for Triloquist I enjoyed one thing in it, just a single line I thought was funny. For Greasy Strangler, I didn't enjoy anything in it. But for this movie, like I said, some of the dialogue is just so ridiculous, and like that talkative roommate of the goth chick in the factory dome. I mean, her dialogue was just funny enough to be amusing. Like the Salon Bolly chick, like the whole sit and spin, bitches. It just, like, after she said that, I cracked up for like 30 seconds, because it was just so horrible. But it amused me. So that's why this is getting a much, I guess, better rating than either one of those two. Because even though it's a really bad movie, I find myself consistently enjoying some of the dialogue and aspects of it, even though the story itself is extraordinarily poor. And I mean, also the whole thing, for Fase, when I was over in Haiti, I saw some zombies, and I got some zombie blood. Like, it just, the whole thing is just so ridiculous, and I just found myself in a lot more fun with this than I ever did the Greasy Strangler. And before bullshit artist.
Well, I think we've talked about this movie for way too long. It's probably the movie we've spent the most time talking about out of every movie we've discussed, so that's deeply disturbing. Okay, so next up, Child's Play 3 from 1991. I mean, there's a lot of things going on in this movie, but the simple fact about it is Chucky's back, and this time he's terrorizing Andy Barclay at a military academy. Now he's got this new body, and he doesn't necessarily need Andy's body anymore, and now he's kind of targeting this other younger kid at the military academy, and it's kind of up to Andy to, I guess, stop Chucky from taking over. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So I think the general consensus for a lot of people, at least for a long time, was that this was a bad movie or a very mediocre movie, definitely in comparison to the first two movies. And I think as time has gone on, I think people are just appreciating it a little more and more. I mean, if someone asked me 10, 15 years ago what I thought of this movie, my rating was probably 1 or 2 scores lower than what I would give it now. And that's probably because I've seen a lot more movies now, and I don't know, just over time I've realized that even though this movie, it's got a really rushed story, and we all know that because it was released 9 months after Part 2 was released. They just quickly went into making this movie after Part 2 came out. Because I guess, a lot of people were paying to see Chucky, and it was a bit of a moneymaker. But so even though it's got a fairly rushed story, the story's kind of stupid in a way, it's still got Chucky in it, and that's the main draw. And I think there's still a lot of really enjoyable scenes in the movie.
Yeah, so I do agree with the common consensus that this movie isn't quite as good as the Foster Saget movies. But I will say I was somewhat surprised by how much I found myself enjoying this when I last saw it. I mean, and this is one of those movies that I saw 3, 4, 5 times when I was a kid. Just maybe not even the whole movie. I just returned it to AMC one day and just watch a few segments, and I'll just turn it away. And so it's a movie I'm very familiar with, and I enjoy quite a bit of it, to be honest. It's not necessarily amazing, but I think it does get the job done. I mean, there's plenty of there's some decently gory scenes. I did like the guy who got crushed in the garbage truck. That was pretty decent. Of course, probably one of the most talked about scenes is the whole war game sequence with real live ammunition, which of course you have a wonderful Montos commercial based around that, so it's some quality stuff. Overall, I think it's pretty decent. I like most of the characters. The only character off the top of my head who I didn't really care for was I think his name is Botnick, and he was played by Andrew Robinson, who if you are familiar with Hellraiser, he actually played Larry, Kosty's father. Hey, he has a so stupid, I forget if it's a mustache or a beard, but his character's a bit over the top for me. So I'm happy something happens to the character, and I'm okay with it. But every other character is pretty much okay. And probably one of the funniest scenes, at least in my opinion, well, there are actually 2 funny scenes. I like that kid complaining about how the Hide the Soul game is boring. That sort of cracked me up. Oh, I don't want to play Hide the Soul. And also there's a scene involving a heart attack in the movie, which I think is well worth watching.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing about this movie, and I never really used to think about it too much, is that this movie actually has a wide variety of deaths that, I mean, certainly a lot different to what you've seen in the previous movies. Like I said, there's one where Chucky just jumps out and the guy just has a heart attack. He doesn't even have to kill him, which is kind of amusing. And there's other ones where, you see one guy, he jumps on a grenade. There's another one where Chucky's replaced all the fake rounds or the paint rounds with real live ammunition, and even at the start there's a strangulation scene. Well, that's the one thing about Chucky that I really enjoyed about his character. We know his character's nickname is the Lakeshore Strangler, so he should be strangling people because that's what he likes to do. I don't really see that much of his character moving on, and even though those scenes are quite simple, I think the thing about strangulation is it's like a slow death. It's simple, but it's slow, and there's something that I find about that type of death.
Deeply erotic.
Yeah, it gives me stiffy. So, yeah, I wish they'd have more strangulation scenes with Chucky. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous to see a doll strangling someone, but at the same time, we know he's got more strength than what a doll should have because he is somewhat human. So, anyways, I just like that part to the character as well.
Yeah, and I also want to point out that as much as I enjoy that finale for the second movie, and I think I agree with you, it's probably one of the best finales. I also really like this one, where, first they get to a carnival, and then they go to like a sort of a fun house, haunted house type thing. And I know I thought it was a lot of fun. And I mean, you can tell, like you said, it feels a bit rushed at times, but that finale, I think, is, one not nearly as good as the second movie. I still think it's a pretty good finale.
Just one other thing, one very amusing thing that I'll bring up. When I was a kid and I would go to the video store, and this may be due to just the third movie coming out so quickly after the second, but I remember one time at the video store, I saw Child's Play 2 in the new release section still, but Child's Play 3 was in the weekly rental section, which is the area where the older movies sit. So it's just kind of amusing that Child's Play 2 was still in the new release section, the 1 to 2 night rental type thing, whereas the other one was like a weekly.
It is always nice when you have some nice childhood memories that are related to movies. And sometimes I feel like that can cloud judgment for how good the movie actually is. But it's still a valid. Obviously, it's valid. So I know it's one of those interesting things I sometimes think about when I watch movies. Like I said, I saw this one quite a few times when I was a kid. So I'm just wondering if I hadn't seen it until I was like 20, if I'd still give it as decent a rating as I'm going to give it. So just interesting thing to think about.
Yep. Well, I mean, for anyone out there that knows me, Child's Play, the original movie, is my all-time favorite movie. That's a 10 out of 10 movie. And the sequel, I like just as much. I also give that one a 10 out of 10. So, Child's Play 3, it's not as good as those first two, but, I mean, I watched the hell out of this movie still, just like I did with the other ones when I was young, and looking back on it, I still enjoy watching this as much as most other movies, simply for the fact that it's got Chucky in it before his whole Franken Chucky look, which I prefer this look. Yeah, so I give this one a 9 out of 10. If you asked me 15 years ago, I probably would have said like a 7 out of 10, but no, it's a 9 because I can watch this. I could watch this every year, whereas most other movies I couldn't. So I factored that in, and I just enjoy it.
Yeah, I'm giving this one not too dissimilar rating. I'm throwing this one an 8 out of 10. Like I said, you can sort of tell it, was maybe a bit rushed, but I think it has a pretty interesting setting. Military school, cast is okay. Like Chucky said, a nice variety of kills in the movie. And I think it's consistently entertaining. So I think an 8 out of 10. I mean, it's not like amazing, but it's still certainly an above average movie. I mean, and Child's Play 1 and 2 are about the movies, but this one is still one that's certainly worth watching, in my opinion. Well, now we can move on to our final movie, which is a sequel to the 1982 Creepshow. This one being, believe it or not, Creepshow 2 from 1987. This one only has 3 stories compared to the 5 stories the original Creepshow had. And 3 stories are, of course, they're short stories, so moderately simple. One, this elderly couple, something happens to them, and a giant chief Indian type statue gets revenge for them. Then there's probably one of the more talked about stories from the Creepshow series, The Raft, in which case it's like an oil blob type thing in the water, and these teens are trying to survive that. And final story being about a hitchhiker who a woman runs over, and the hitchhiker keeps coming back asking for a ride. I guess technically thanking her for the ride, but yeah, it's I mean, this is one that I'm assuming a lot of people have seen. I don't think it holds a candle to the original. I do think the framing story, which is done in an animation style, it's late 80s animation, so to me it looks a bit outdated, but it's okay. The framing story is decent. I did like the finale to the framing story. That was fun, but I don't know if it's quite as engaging as the first movie's framing sequence. I don't know. I'll just say this movie is nearly as it's not nearly as good as the first Creepshow, and I'll just say right now that I think my favorite story is probably the first one, being the old Chief Warden had. I think it has a decent emotional impact, and while I enjoy aspects of The Raft, which is based on a Stephen King short story, actually, on a side note, that story, I mean, there's not much to it, and I don't know if it's really enough to give it like such a glowing review. But before I talk about how much I hated The Hitchhiker, what do you think about Creepshow 2, Chucky?
Well, you liked that first one because of the dude's hair. You loved his hair.
Okay, that guy got a bit annoying. It's been a little while since I've seen this one, so I actually forgot how annoying that guy was. So.
Yeah, I'd seen this once before, years ago, and yeah, I watched it again last night. And for anyone who watched our review or discussion of the original Creepshow, they'll know that I'm not a huge fan of anthology movies. And that's mainly because, I guess, the segments don't go long enough for me to really get into them, and even if I am enjoying them, they're over, in 20 minutes, so it's not like enjoying a whole movie. So you have one segment that you kind of like, and then it's followed with another segment, and you kind of like, and though this one, I think the original, was it 5 stories?
Yes.
Yeah, and then this one's only 3?
Yep.
Yeah, so this one, the segments go maybe a little bit longer, but they're still, 25 minutes or whatever it is, just under half an hour each. I mean, the Raft one's decent. Like I said, there's not too much to it. The first one's also fine. Well, all 3 of them to me are okay. I didn't really have any highs or lows. I just thought they're all okay to decent. And of course, the Blob remake from 1988 that came along, and it's kind of the same thing as The Raft, but much better. And they can make it more than 20 minutes long. Yeah, I think it's okay. I can watch it, but I don't necessarily have any desire to go back and watch it anytime soon. The animated segments also didn't really do much for me. I didn't really care about that.
Yeah, I don't think they're great, but especially like the final sequence, it's sort of goofy enough, and animated, just I was okay with it. Seeing like the kid laugh evilly as the plant things are messing with the bodies, I was okay with it. I think one of the reasons that the first sequence always stood out with me was, just a very nice old couple in a very dark town. That if that town had a population of more than 50 people, I'll be deeply surprised. Very nice couple, and then these total dicks come in. Stuff happens to them. Spoilers, they die. So it's I know it's very touching, because I thought that couple, guy being George Kennedy, who's a very big name, and the woman being a Dorothy Lamour, I thought that, even though it's a very short story, I thought they did really well, and I certainly felt like an emotional tugging of the heart, and they seemed like a real couple. So I mean, I don't know, and when the whole statue comes to life, and it goes after the 3 guys who did this. I mean, it's not particularly gory, but this I don't know. I like the idea of the silhouette. Using a tomahawk and getting that one guy in the garage. It was creative. That's why I think the first toy is probably the best one. My problem with The Raft is, aside from there not being much to it, I mean, are there any characters in that worth rooting for? Aside from, like, I guess the Blob Monster? Like, the four guys, 2 girls, 2 guys, they were just generic cookie cutter characters who, honestly, I don't remember a thing about any of them aside from the fact that none of them were worth caring about. And just a little about the Hitchhiker. And this comes up anytime we get to anything getting close to comedy horror. This story is a bit more comedic, not necessarily to the main woman character, but and I was, when I first saw this movie as a kid, I did like the first story. Then I saw the movie a few years later, and I still did like that Hitchhiker story. And every time I've seen this movie, and it's probably been about 3 or 4 times, the Hitchhiker story always seems so weak to me. Because one, it's not like the story is necessarily original. I have no idea how many times the whole Hitchhiker trope has appeared in movies, but this is not the first time it's come up. And I don't think there's enough in the story to really keep my entertainment going. I don't know, it sort of ends the movie on sort of like a very generic note, which, like Chucky says, it's one of the problems with anthology movies, because it's very, very rare you find an anthology movie where every single story is good. I've seen quite a few anthology movies, and I can only think of maybe 1 or 2 movies where I would say every story is definitely above average. So that's the problem with these movies. I mean, that said, I still like the first Creepshow, but this one, especially with only 3 stories, it just wasn't enough here to entertain me nearly as much as the first movie did.
I mean, the Hitchhiker one's obviously got some decent gory stuff happen at the end, and I guess the funniest thing about it is the guy at the start saying he charges $150 for 6 orgasms.
Yes, he certainly yes, and a big part about the last story, actually, the main woman is she's cheating on her husband with this one guy, and she's only in it for the money. She's just such an unlikable character that seeing this hitchhiker zombie guy, sort of like pop up after her, like I was okay with it. So I mean, it's like sometimes in a movie or like a story like this was, when there's no sympathetic characters, it's just really hard to care about what's going on. That's also true, like I said, for the Raft, but Hitchhiker, I mean, that woman just annoyed me, so I just didn't care.
Yeah. I guess the only other thing that I wanted to say about this one was just how ambitious that guy was on the Raft. There's only 2 of them left, and they're, trying to survive this thing that's trying to kill them, and, he starts trying to get some sex.
Yeah, that was in my opinion, that's not the right time.
Yeah.
Actually, I was really impressed at how did it die. like the music was playing for it was at least 12 hours. That was
overnight or something.
Yeah, it was a very strong battery right there.
Yeah, definitely not the right time to get laid, and even more awkward that girl was the other guy's girlfriend, not his girlfriend. He must have really been up for it.
Yeah, I guess he saw an opening and maybe he could take it. Actually, now you mention it, I should say, as much as the Raft does do a lot for me, the special effects are pretty solid. This blob type creature sort of disintegrates the skin, down to the bones, and so the special effects, like Chucky said, they're not really far removed from the Blob, which came out the following year, but the special effects are still pretty good. And same thing for the Hitchhiker. So I mean, I would say the movie probably succeeds enough in that aspect, but the stories, the second 2 stories just aren't that great. I did notice, I was reading a bit about this movie, and originally there was supposed to be 5 stories, but due to budgetary issues, it was sort of cut down to 3, which is somewhat disappointing, because I sort of wonder, had they had more stories, if the movie would have been better. You might have disliked it more, but I mean, it can't be as bad as Creepshow 3, so...
Well, I never saw 3, so...
I've never seen it either. I've just only heard bad things about it.
Oh, okay.
So, and when I do see that, it'll be a good time. So this movie, I'll just go ahead and rate it, if that's okay. 6 out of 10.
Okay. Yeah, no, I've got the exact same rating, 6 out of 10. It's okay. I mean, I actually don't have a preference with the first or the second one, like one over the other. I think in terms of just enjoyment, for me, they're both on the same level. I know for you prefer the original, but yep, for me, I like I said, I didn't dislike any of the stories in part 2, but none of them also threw it over the top either. And with the first one, I thought there were a couple of decent stories, and then also a couple that didn't do anything for me. So they'll kind of balance out to about the same.
Yeah, I think for me, the first movie, it's just so classic in my opinion. And even though none of the stories are utterly amazing, even like the bad stories, like the one that Stephen King becoming plant type guy, even that was intriguing. And I just don't get the same sense here. It doesn't feel nearly as classic, and it just didn't do nearly as much as I was hoping for.